So now we're actually recording. Hello, everybody. It's time again for Guerrilla Atheism, straight from Dillahunty International Studios. The Atheist Experience coming to you live over Ustream. You can go to the website, www.atheist-experience.com, for more information about the show, how to connect to it, frequently asked questions page. You can get the email address there, tv@atheist-community.org. You can also find a link to the parent site, the sponsor of our show, the Atheist Community of Austin, of which I happen to be president, and my co-host today, Jen Peeples, happens to be the vice president.
Hi, everybody.
So, I mean, if you ever wanted to talk to the people who are in charge of this, you should probably come to a board meeting and talk to the other board members rather than taking anything that we happen to say as gospel. The intro music today was another song by Brian Stiegsma. I played one of his other songs, Galaxy's Elegant Cinema, a few weeks ago, and we got lots of emails saying, hey, what's that song? I can't find it anywhere. That was really good. I can't get it out of my head. And, well, that's one of the reasons that I played it. This one's called Oblivion, Scare Your Child. And there's actually a third clip of another song that Brian sent that I'll probably be using for intro music maybe next week. I haven't decided yet. And then I'm thinking, I just spur of the moment, haven't talked this over with anybody because I roll like that. I'm just dangerous. I'm a crazy man. I'm thinking, Frank and I were talking about possibly having an official theme song or intro song for the show rather than using different music all the time. This is something we've discussed before. There's lots of good reasons for it, in addition to never ever having to worry about copyright issues, even though everything we've used, as far as we can tell, is, falls within the bounds of fair use.
Yeah.
And since I'm a big fan of Brian's music and like those clips, what I may do is, after using them a couple times, put up some kind of vote thing on the website and let the fans of the show pick the one they like the most, and then if I like it, I'll use it, and if not, I'll use something else. Anyway, we're here having fun. Today's Sunday, August 23rd, I think. 2009.
Yes,
we are live from Dillahunty International Studios. We do have some new information about the public access studio. I know that those of you who are watching live now have obviously been watching fairly regularly. Since we had to move out of the studio, they're doing renovation, putting in new equipment. It's all kinds of really nice stuff, and hopefully the studio will be a lot better for it once it's open and people are trained and we can start using it. The original plan was to do training towards the end of August and be back in the studio in September. That is not the case. The earliest that they are anticipating opening the studio is October 15th. Is that opening for shows or opening for training?
I think that's opening for shows.
Okay.
Yeah, the training is supposed to start the week of September 7th.
Yeah.
And that's for main and mini studio training. And then the micro studio training probably won't happen until October.
Cool.
But the main and mini studios will be open for live shows sometime after October 15th. So we're looking mid-October before we're back in studio.
Yeah. So we're probably going to continue doing shows from here for a while. Maybe even as late October before we get back in the studio. We're going to do everything we can to keep doing it every week. There may be some weeks that can't happen, in which case Frank or somebody will play a recorded version of the show. I know that in 2 weeks, that'll be Labor Day weekend here in the United States, big holiday weekend, and my girlfriend is actually coming down for that weekend, and there's a nonprofits scheduled for that Saturday and an Atheist Experience scheduled for that Sunday. Right now the plan is to go ahead and do both of them, even though it's a busy holiday weekend for folks. So I'm trying to keep interruptions to a minimum. The Atheist Community of Austin, who sponsors this program, also sponsors the nonprofits that I mentioned just a moment ago. We were live yesterday. We're supposed to be live every other Saturday from 2 to 3:30 Central. We don't always make that schedule, and it's my fault entirely. My work schedule sometimes prevents us from doing it, and we do that show from here too using the same equipment, minus the camera. And for the people who wrote in, no, we're not going to start filming nonprofits. You'd be bored. There's 4 or 5 people sitting around a table just, BSing. And it's really, you're not going to get any more out of it from watching it than you would from listening to it. So that's still available as a podcast for download and for listening live. We run a chat service in conjunction with the show. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. And that's PROPHETS for the nonprofits. And the audio portion of this program is available at the Atheist Experience website for download. You can get it as a podcast. The video is being uploaded right now to Blip TV. We're streaming live over Ustream. Old episodes are archived at Google Video. We have some of them available from our site as well. When you go there, there'll be a link to the video, which will launch whichever player and storage facility is appropriate for that episode. And for those people who are looking for older episodes, you can go to the main Atheist Community of Austin site and go to the products page, and there's links there for DVDs of old episodes. Those are all released using the Creative Commons license, share alike, which means that once you get the DVD in your hands, you're free to do whatever you want with it. Share it, give it away, print up 1 million copies and hand it out at the mall. Cut out clips from it and use it for your own projects, as long as the derivative projects are also given away for free. You cannot use the content of any of the shows to make money. So, because we don't.
Well, and our license actually allows us to do that. And if you want to use some of our clips or whatever in something that you anticipate making money off of, that requires board action. So you need to contact us and get written permission to basically use that, and then of course the board would have to consider that and determine what, if any, compensation the ACA would get as a result of that.
Yeah, there's some independent filmmakers who've contacted us about using clips or doing interviews or talking to people on the show and with the board, and we're open to all of that, and we'll consider everything that we can work into our schedules. One of the reasons that we do the show and give it away for free, there is a charge for the DVDs, but that's just for the actual physical processing of the DVD. We want the word to get out to as many people as possible. We want to try, and we don't always succeed, and I'm not saying that we're the best thing since sliced bread. It's just we have pretty much a one-of-a-kind show. I'm not aware of anybody else who's doing 90-minute weekly shows where they take calls, especially on public access television. I know that there are some new podcasts that are taking calls over Skype, much the way that we're doing. And we've been around for a while, and we appreciate the feedback, but we just want to get information out there, make people publicly aware that here's who we are, here's what we believe, what we don't believe. We're open to having conversations with you, particularly about what you say you believe, or what you actually believe, and why. Why being a critical factor, because if you say, well, I believe this, and I can't prove it to you, and I don't really have any good reason or evidence for you, okay, great. Enjoy your belief. Hopefully it's not something that's harmful to you or others. If it is, then I think we would sit around and argue that not only is your belief unjustified, but it's harmful.
Yeah.
So in addition to this program and the nonprofits, the ACA also does a number of other events, not actually programs, but we have a lecture series the first Sunday of every month. Every other Sunday of each month, we meet at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road for brunch. By the way, we're in Austin, Texas, for those who don't know. Somebody emailed recently thinking we were in California or something. It was weird. We're in Austin, Texas. So if you're in Austin, Texas, you're welcome to come to any of our events. And if you're outside of Austin and are going to be in the Austin area, you're also welcome to come. You can come down and sit and watch the show live when we're back in the studio, not while we're here at my place. And you can come to happy hour on Thursdays, or the lectures, or the brunch, or the show. After the show's over, we go to dinner. Right now we're going to Pluckers up at Lake Creek Mall, or it's on Pecan Park Boulevard there at 620. And the ACA on September 26th is going to be having its annual Bat Cruise. Austin, for those who don't know, has the largest metropolitan population of bats, somewhere in the order of 3 million or so, that live down by the Congress Street Bridge. We get together once a year during the peak of their we're going out into the night to hunt season, and we're going to be meeting at Threadgills on Riverside. There's parking at One Texas Center directly behind Threadgills. We'll meet there around 5, and at 5:30 we'll head out and walk down to the pier. It's a block or two maybe. Take the boat out for a couple hours, watch the bats come out, head back in, and then walk back to Threadgills where people can have dinner, drinks, and do whatever. And then some of us are getting together to go to Esther's Follies, the 10 o'clock show on 6th Street, after all the other events are over. If you'd like to participate in that, you're going to want to go to Esther'sFollies.com or call their number. You can get more information from them. And pre-book your seats. That show, they do it Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, I think, and they're pretty much always sold out. So a week or two ahead of time, you're probably going to want to call and say, hey, I want to get in there. I don't know. I guess that's all the actual announcement. No, it's not. The Texas Free Thought Convention is coming up.
Yes.
November 14th, I believe, in San Antonio. We'll try and get a link up on our site directly to it. I was there last year. Actually, it was in Austin last year. This year, their list of speakers include Vic Stinger and a number of others. They've got a website up, and I'll try and get that link up. I don't have the information handy. What else have we got?
I have an announcement.
Okay.
The ACA is now on Twitter. So if you would like to keep up with what's going on with the ACA, this is primarily for people in the Austin area, but if you follow the nonprofits and the Atheist Experience, I'll be tweeting information about the upcoming shows as well as any other activities with the ACA. And the Twitter, the name of the Twitter feed is Inside the ACA with no spaces in there. So just type Inside the ACA. If you search on that, we'll come up and you'll see that.
We can add Twitter under the Ustream thing too.
Okay.
If you want to add that, I'll do that.
Yep,
Cool.
we can do that.
Not right this second.
For those who didn't hear, Frank says we can add Twitter right onto the Ustream. So
Cool.
good
I'll
stuff.
have it next week.
I have a couple of rules about Twitter. If your tweets are blocked, so are you. So if you want to join, follow us on Twitter, make sure your tweets aren't blocked. If you want to have one tweet up there and you're following 700 people and there's just a link to some pictures, you're getting blocked. So.
Quickly, with regard to doing the show from here, we've talked about this before. We are still taking calls, or actually we're making calls, but we're using Skype. So you're going to want to go to skype.com, SKYPE, download the software, set yourself up an account. It's all free for you to use. And then add into your contact list the name Atheist TV, ATHEIST TV, no spaces. When the show's on, which is every Sunday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Central, and you can do the calculations on what that means in your time zone since we're getting calls from all over the world. You can send a text message over Skype to Atheist TV with your name, your location, and what you want to talk about. And John is over there today screening the calls. We'll figure out the list order in which we're going to make calls, and then we'll call you over Skype and be ready. Turn down your stream. Wear headphones if you can to avoid any feedback and whatever else. And we'll take calls that way. It's been working pretty good so far.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. So you are now in control. I cede command of the couch.
All right. Well, for today's show, I have a question for you. And that is, would you die for a lie? So, better question here. Would you sell all your possessions and follow someone if you knew that they were telling you the truth about something that you wanted to believe? And how would you know that they were telling you the truth? And if you later found out that what you knew wasn't actually true, how would you handle that? So these are some of the questions that I'm going to explore in the next few months in a series that I'm going to do on certainty, uncertainty, and what it means to say that we know something. So when we talk about knowing something, making a claim of knowledge, the question comes up, when a theist claims to know something, for example, that Jesus was divine and he was the Son of God, are the theists using the word know in the same way that, for example, we would use it as atheists? And I think that there was a comment on Debunking Christianity, which is a website, by the way, and this comment was in response to someone's deconversion story. And I think it really shed some light on this question. A theist commented that faith is being sure of things we don't know and certain of things that we can't see. Okay? So, let me say that again. Faith is being sure of things we don't know and certain of things we can't see. I think we decided that was probably something a paraphrase of something Paul said. Okay. So let's think about that for a minute. How can you be sure of things that you don't know? And I can perceive things that I can't see, but the underlying meaning in that statement is that this person is basing his assessment of the accuracy of his religious beliefs on what's known as a feeling of knowing. Okay. This is an example of what I call pathological certainty. That what this theist believes is true in spite of any disconfirming evidence. And there are many examples which I'm going to present in following shows here. But for now, let me make a comment here that this feeling of knowing is at the heart of many religious claims. It's comforting for believers, but it has no bearing at all on the truth of their beliefs. So this question came up, would you die for a lie? We got an email from one of our fans who had been presented with a common Christian claim that it really illustrates this feeling of knowing and also the equally common failure to verify the accuracy of beliefs. So the claim is that Jesus must have been divine because his disciples wouldn't have died for something that they knew was a lie. So they must have known that he was the Son of God and that he was resurrected. Okay. And of course, our immediate response to that is to point out that the 9/11 hijackers knew that Allah wanted them to fly the planes into the buildings, thereby killing thousands of people, and that they would be rewarded for doing this. Now, the Christian response to this is typically that the hijackers just believed, but the disciples knew. So we're back to how do you know what you know? But if we look at that claim, that Christian response to this is that they recognize that people act on their beliefs. But the claim isn't that they have just a belief. They're claiming that they have actual knowledge. And then they further torture the logic here by claiming that if the resurrection was a conspiracy, that the disciples wouldn't have died spreading the news of it. So there we have pathological certainty and the typical reaction upon hearing disconfirming evidence, which is to torture logic and invent another reason for why your original beliefs are true. So here's my critique of that. The argument's intellectually dishonest from the beginning, in that those who use it have abdicated their responsibility to verify the accuracy of their beliefs. And incidentally, that's a responsibility we all share. If you go to the website Snopes, you'll find hundreds of claims that have been, some of them have been confirmed, some have been completely debunked, but it's all stuff that people have emailed to other people uncritically because it was something they wanted to believe anyway. So they didn't bother to even click on a link that was provided in the original email. They just forwarded it to everybody on their email list saying, here, look at this. And it's usually some moral outrage thing or something fantastic. But again, it's something they want to believe. So they accept no responsibility to verify the accuracy of it, and they just clog your email box with this junk. The other problem with this die for a lie claim is that it makes several assumptions that can't even withstand casual scrutiny. The first of which is that Jesus existed as an actual historical person, in spite of the fact that there's no extra biblical evidence of this. And before you guys email me with Josephus and Suetonius and Tacitus, yeah, I know about that stuff, okay? It documents the existence of Christians. It does not document the existence of Jesus, okay? I'm not saying that he...
Tacitus and Suetonius and the others, would document the existence of Christians and not Jesus. Josephus, there's the passage that references Jesus. There's the Testimonium Flavius, which is generally considered to be a forgery, but it doesn't matter
Right.
because Josephus wasn't born until after Jesus would have supposedly died anyway, so it's not contemporary evidence. It's
Right.
still hearsay, second or third person removed at least.
Right.
Anyway, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, but except for the people that will email us and say, oh, Josephus. And
By the way, and I can't believe I forgot this, and you can actually look because it's actually handwritten in their faith chapter.
oh, yeah.
It's in Hebrews 11:1 actually, where now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, which I think that is a paraphrase of.
Yeah. So my other critique of this, continued here, is that it assumes also that the disciples existed, and that they actually died for their beliefs and not for some other reason. And it also assumes that, assuming the disciples existed and Jesus existed and everything, that's all historically true, absent the miracle claims, or even including the miracle claims, assuming all that's true, that they were simply not deceived. They could have just been deceived. Okay.
And by the way, and I'm happy to grant the existence of Jesus for the sake of argument. I'm happy to grant the existence of disciples and apostles and etc. And I'm also happy to grant that they died on behalf of their beliefs. Okay, that's all well and good. None of that tells me anything about whether or not their beliefs were true. Like we've said about 1 million times, neither the number of people who believe something, the strength of their conviction, what they're willing to do because of it, or the length of time that this particular belief has survived, none of that is evidence for the truth of a belief.
Right.
I just find it so absurd that people would say, well, nobody would die for a lie. Well, yeah, in a way you're right. They don't think it's a lie. And I imagine maybe somebody has knowingly died for something that they know was a lie. But by and large, people who die for something don't know that it's a lie. But that tells us about their mental state, what they happen to most likely believe. It doesn't tell us whether or not their beliefs are actually true. I mean, to make a claim like that, you are ignoring the martyr of every other religion, for example, and you brought up 9/11.
Exactly.
It's just this comes up so often. It's like, well, you think the disciples must have been lying? No,
and that's my last point. I mean, assuming no deception, they could have simply been mistaken. People are mistaken all the time, and in fact, magicians and illusionists count on that. So that is completely unremarkable that humans could make a mistake about something. But I guess I had a thought and I lost it here. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there are countless other martyrs of different religions. They believed that they were dying for the truth.
And what's curious is that on occasion when I've had this conversation with a Christian who has brought up this, stupidly said something like other religions don't have martyrs, and you say, yes, they do. Yeah. Then their next response is, well, they don't have as many martyrs as we do. Yeah. Holy crap. I mean,
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
But the thing is, even the willingness to give your life for a belief does not have any bearing at all on whether that belief is true.
Right.
So the intensity of the feeling, the number of people that believe it, none of those indicate to us whether it's true or not. So all I wanted to do today was introduce this topic, and I'm going to explore that a little further in the next probably 2 shows that I'm on. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be certain and uncertain about something.
It's good because we get lots of questions, particularly after I did the belief lecture and I defined knowledge in a particular way. My purpose in defining knowledge that way was to raise the point that I have no interest in claims of knowledge. And whether or not Jen agrees with me or whether or not Jen's definitions are the same, I'm sure we'll have some interesting conversations there. But going back to this accusation of lying, this is by the way, an argument that comes up. Josh McDowell has used it. I'm sure that Lee Strobel has used it and others, that either you believe that the disciples lied or the whole thing's true. And it puts the person that you're talking to, this is a clever yet devious and despicable trick. It puts the person that you're talking to in the position of saying, well, I don't want to call somebody a liar, that's impolite, and completely ignores the other options that are available. Right. C.S. Lewis's famous liar, lunatic, or Lord. Well, there's also legend, if you want to stay with the L's, or myth and mistaken are also options. It's the same false dichotomy we get all the time, not just with regard to the disciples. It's like, oh, well, either they're lying or it's the truth. No, you're ignoring options. Oh, well, either you believe in a God or you believe there's no God. No. Either you believe in a God or you don't believe in a God. Those are the two options. And then within that second subset, there is also those, like myself, who happen to believe that there are no gods. Now, what's the justification for this? To what degree of certainty do you hold this belief? Those are all questions for discussion.
Yeah. And getting back to this idea of, Jesus' divinity and was he an actual historical person, if you tell me that you believe there was an itinerant Jewish preacher running around in what we think of as Jerusalem or Israel now at that time, who was preaching a message of salvation, I find that to be a completely unremarkable claim. I could easily accept that, and
might even have been 2 of them,
or 100. And I guess that's my point, is that this was a very common theological idea that was happening in a Jewish theological movement around the 1st century. And so the idea that there could have been a guy like that running around preaching a salvation message, that I can accept that without any evidence at all, just because we know that this was going on. My question is, if you pointed to any of the hundreds of them that were doing this and say, that's the Jesus guy I'm talking about, how do you distinguish him from all the other guys? Yeah.
And by the way, a quick correction, and I do this just so that I don't necessarily get email on it, although correcting this is probably going to get email from other people as well. When I said that was that the statement about faith that was paraphrased from Paul, it's because it's in Hebrews, and a lot of people get that wasn't. So, just so that I don't get. Not that those are didn't you? It's stuff.
Well, actually, I think I'm ready to open the phone lines and get somebody on the phone.
Well, while John is getting our first caller queued up and ready to go, I'll mention again that after today's show's over, we're heading up to Pluckers by Lakeline Mall or Lake Creek Mall. I don't know why I keep getting the names switched on that, but Pecan Park Boulevard at 620. There's a Chili's and a Fuddruckers, and then Pluckers is right there. It's a wing bar. They are proud to note on their T-shirts that for vegetarians, they proudly serve chicken that wants 8 vegetables. So, although you can just get a salad there, John is vegan and joins us almost every time we go up there. And there's a pretty decent salad, I'd say, that you can just tell them don't put the chicken on the salad, and you get a good salad out of it.
Are you vegan or vegetarian? Oh, okay.
So, yes, for all the vegans who despise me or want to convert me, I have plenty of friends who are vegans, and the discussions have come up on occasion.
And they don't usually think they're morally superior to us omnivores.
Some do, but John's my buddy.
Yeah.
Even if he thinks he's morally superior to me, he's okay with it because we're friends. Who we got?
We have Tommy from
Tommy in Dublin, Ireland.
In Dublin, how are you?
I'm great, mate.
Great.
Listen, Matt, I'm trying to knock you off so that I'm only talking to you on the Skype.
Okay.
But suddenly my security decided to kick in, so we might have to sort of whistle through it if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Just
it's okay.
Move right along to whatever you wanted to talk about.
Okay. Well, listen. The thing is, I don't know if you. I sent you a few letters of recent weeks about a debate I'm supposed to be taking on British television. Probably. In fact, so many letters you don't remember.
No,
but anyway,
no.
Something came up out of that.
Did I email you back?
You did indeed. You told me not to do it. Very wisely.
Okay, then I know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's irrelevant, but we'll leave that to one side for a second.
I'm with you.
Something's come up as a result of this, and it seems to be that these guys withdraw into all kinds of emotional arguments and what have you when they're confronted with solid facts. And my question to you is, and you probably found this yourself, it starts with hard evidence, their arguments. They say things like, we have evidence of this, we have evidence of that. And as soon as you shoot that down, they withdraw into personal experiences of the supernatural.
Yeah.
That it's you have to think with your heart rather than your head. Have you heard all of these?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Definitely.
And the point is, no matter how good your argument is, and no matter how difficult it is to get round, they've still got a position. It's usually, well, you're not gullible enough to believe us. You know? Well,
Yes.
If only they'd be that honest.
I don't believe. I mean, what I'm asking is, do you think at this point, with the internets and everything else at our disposal, all the hard evidence there is, do you think that they're taking a new approach to this now? Do you think possibly they're saying, well, rationality isn't really the way to look at Christianity. You must believe it in your heart, and that's that.
Well, that's not a new approach by any means. I mean, that goes back to Luther. Luther saying that enemy was reason was the enemy of faith. It's a despicable whore. I think it's the position that more and more people are finding themselves forced to assume, because for a long time, at least in the United States, I know that this isn't the case elsewhere. It was rude to talk about religion, and so people like myself and Jen, who are atheists, by and large, because we're such a small minority, and in order to not seem impolite, would quietly sit there and perhaps nod and smile or dismiss huge chunks of absurdity and never actually challenge these claims. Now that the claims...
Yes, I reminded somebody that the granny used to be a tart, but isn't anymore because she's a sweet old lady now.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's... I think that this should come as a surprise to nobody. And the people that it seems to come as the biggest surprise to are theists.
Yeah.
These are big... potentially big philosophical questions that the greatest minds have pondered since we began pondering things. They're
no problem, are they?
The claims by themselves, when you get down to it, when you distill out what you can discern from what you can't, from what there is evidence for, from what there isn't, their claims fall into this category, and therefore there is no defense that qualifies as rational. And even when you get, some of the best Christian theologians, thinkers, guys who are, by and large, eminently reasonable, for example, I would look at Reverend Barry Lynn, who is largely reasonable and secular. I'd say Francis Collins, who accepts science in its entirety, except for a couple of little minor areas. Also, I'd say Hal Bidlack, who's active in the skeptic movement, who was the MC at TAM 7, who is not a theist, but a deist, and will freely admit that the type of God that he believes in or thinks is possible is something that is completely untestable. Those people are admitting it, that this is something personal to them that they cannot necessarily share. It's like reality plus. Their God is kind of outside of this.
Right.
And it's the people who try to jam that God into every little aspect of reality, every puzzle where we don't have an answer, every scientific hypothesis that is not yet confirmed. Those are the ones that are in trouble because they have built their beliefs on reasons that can only be knocked out from under them. That is why I do the show. My point is to get as many sound bites out there that knock the knees out from under these people who think that they actually have a rational reason for their belief. When they get to the point that they are forced by intellectual honesty, and not all of them will do this, to admit that their belief is faith-based, that it is personal, that it is primarily emotional, that it is without rational support, that's the end of my work. It's up to them at that point to figure out whether or not they're comfortable continuing in a belief like that. It's not my job, it's not my purpose to try and convert people away from religions. I'm just here trying to give my perspective and a measured dose of reality to people who seem to be divorced from it.
Yeah. But don't you notice there's two approaches now? Haven't you also noticed there seems to be a change? I've noticed a change. These days, when you persist, when you put it to them, it's right in front of their eyes. They take two approaches, or should I say withdrawals. They actually withdraw, they run and hide, and don't get back to you. Or they adopt, as you say, this approach of, well, it's emotional, it's personal to me, and they're running out of places to hide.
Well, they don't have to go any further than that, because that is a position that is entirely defensible. Once I say that I believe something and I can't demonstrate it to anybody else, I cannot demonstrate it through any of the means by which we would normally go about figuring out what's real and what's not real. I have established a position, a belief that is completely defended from rational scrutiny.
Yeah, but the point is they begin their argument with hard evidence.
Yeah.
When you've shot that down, where did they go then?
Well,
and they all do it. I mean, look at Josh McDowell, and I spend more time arguing with disciples of these guys who don't actually have a point.
And who don't have a clue what they're talking about. What happens?
Exactly.
Right.
What happens with guys when I start getting quotes from Josh McDowell, Lee Strobel, and stuff? They're from people who have only read Josh McDowell and Lee Strobel, who haven't bothered for a moment to read essays or books that are critical of those approaches.
Right.
They were believers. The evidence that demands a verdict book falls into their hand, and all this does is give them evidence, supposedly, that reinforces this belief. And this is critical because I think it is both good and bad. It puts us in the position of constantly having to respond to people who have no real concept of what they're talking about. There's a guy who's emailed us this week that I'll be responding to later who is Jewish, and when I pointed out some objections to factual statements that he made that were wrong, he ignored that and came back with more factual statements that were wrong. And it's like demonstrating that, okay, you're not at this level of conversation. You haven't done this much investigation. The good aspect of it, though, is for people like myself. I was a Christian. I read McDowell's book. And I was like, wow, I feel so much better because this thing that I have always believed to be true, this thing that I felt was kind of personal, that I didn't really know how to defend, now I have a defense. And it was when I went to investigate that defense, when people launched objections to it, when I read people saying, "Oh yeah, we read that McDowell stuff too, we read that Strobel stuff too, and here's where they're wrong." When I began to actually investigate it and determined to care about what was true, all of that fell off from underneath, and then I was put in the position of, "Wow, how can I possibly continue to believe something when all the evidence that has ever been presented to me to support it is questionable at best, if not outright wrong?" I'm not the kind of person who could ever believe something or be comfortable believing something simply because it felt good.
Well,
and now it wouldn't feel good.
And it's interesting because Answers in Genesis, which is they're fundamentalist creationists, they even have a list of arguments that you shouldn't use anymore because they've realized that. The
ones using are pretty crappy.
Oh well, yeah. They still put out some absolute crap.
Their list just isn't long enough yet.
I know.
That's another side goal I think every atheist should take, is to expand their list. They've gone so far as to list some arguments that you should not use anymore in defense of your faith because they're so bad and so easily debunked that they don't even want people using them. But we still hear those from time to time, and it's because people have not even done even a cursory examination of the evidence to support their beliefs.
Did you ever listen to Jason Liesel? He did a sermon, shall we call it, on the time light speed, what they call problem. The guy's a proper astrophysicist. He's actually done the exams and he has the degrees. And he pretty much, right across the board, until he gets into the philosophy of it, he uses every argument that I would use. And he shoots every creationist argument down, apart from, well, possibly time slowed down because we're at the center of the universe, which doesn't work either, by the way, but I won't go into that now.
Yeah.
But this guy knows the facts. He understands everything about it, the physics, the mathematics, and the guy still wants to believe that, as in accordance with Genesis 5, the Earth is the universe, should I say, is 6,000 years old, and God made the stars and the moon on the fourth day, the whole bit.
Now, I wonder if we're talking about the same guy.
There's denial for you.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I think it's important to call that what it is, which is just intellectual dishonesty. I mean, if
there's a prime example from this week. The guy you're talking about is an astrophysicist, but recently, I believe in Boston, there's a PhD biologist, a graduate from Harvard, who went to give a lecture on creationism. He is a young Earth creationist with a PhD in biology and gave this lecture, and of course the skeptics community came out and questioned him on it. If you go like to the Fringula blog or to Skepchick, the Skepchick website, Rebecca wrote up a trip report talking about what happened there, and some other people did as well. This guy was just bombarded by questions and basically had to say that he was ignoring...
That's skeptic.com.
What's that?
Skeptic.com website, yeah?
Skepchick.
Oh, Skepchick. Oh, yeah, I've never heard of that one. Couldn't.
It's a blog from women skeptics and one guy, Sam, in Austin.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Who I've never met, but Sam, if you're out there...
Yeah, Sam, you should come to meetings.
We'll drink.
We make that sound like we're AA.
Anyway, Tommy, let me know what goes on with that debate. I'm anxious to hear.
I'm going after them again. They've run and hide.
Yeah.
They're running and hiding. I've left it. I left it a week, and it's become a week and a few days. But ironically, I don't know whether it is ironically, they did a special program including this McMurtry character. Have you ever heard of him, by the way? Grady McMurtry. What?
I don't think so.
What
That doesn't ring a bell.
I'm glad we don't. I'm glad we don't have the monopoly on nutcases then.
No, this guy is a Yank. I'm sorry. It's just that the Brits are taking it in, or the few that they have over there are taking this guy in hook, line, and sinker because he's so utterly confident. He makes a bold statement like. Radiometric dating doesn't work, and no geologist uses it, no paleontologist uses it. And your next question obviously is, well, why do these these companies exist, and why are they making so much money? It's a really bold statement.
Yeah, I know a few geologists who would probably dispute that. In fact, they definitely
I'm sure they
dispute
would.
that.
I think about 99% of the scientific community would dispute it.
Yeah.
I mean, at that
well
point,
established before, they didn't need radiometric dating.
That's a really good point because in the case of, for example, documenting that evolution actually occurred. When you have multiple lines of investigation from multiple disciplines all converging on one answer, you can be pretty confident that you're on the right track. And that's the case. I mean, the radiometric dating confirms other items, for example, genetics. We can actually date...
Morphology, taxonomy,
we can...
lines of phylogeny.
Yeah, I think one of the key things to note, too, with regard to this, spouting of blatant falsehoods, I often get asked, do you think so-and-so, whatever apologist, is lying, or are they just deluded? And it's rare that I say anybody's lying.
I really feel like calling them a liar to their face, to be honest. I don't, but I feel like it.
But what I would say with regard to people like this, this is a particular type of preaching, and not exclusive to religion, by the way. It's preaching of any message that you want to get across. And that is, whatever your belief is, whatever information you may have, state it firmly, authoritatively, and it's going to be accepted.
They'll swallow it, yeah.
Uncritically by the people who already agree with you. And this will spread because they're going to repeat it. They've now heard somebody who is in a position of authority, or seems to be in a position of authority, say something that reaffirms their beliefs, and so then they will continue to spread that message, which is how we get those thousands of spam emails of things that are easily disproven. For example, it's Snopes.com and other websites debunking urban myths. But do I think they're lying? I think some of them are, but I am not able to tell which of them are lying or not. But I will say that this is not some innocent mistake on their part. If you have put yourself in a position of representing authority to people, and you state your position authoritatively, firmly, with the intent of having people accept it and spread that meme, and you have not bothered to check to make sure that your brazen facts, that your bald assertions are in fact true. And when you say something like radiometric dating doesn't work and no geologists use it, that's so far from true that you're an irresponsible piece of crap who is worse than a liar.
You must have read my letter to them. That's what I said.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for the call, Tommy. We've got a bunch of other people waiting on.
Okay, I'm sorry it took so long.
No, cheers.
No problem.
I might ring again.
Take care,
mate.
So yeah, there's. I don't need to do the dinner after the show note after every single call, but that actually, I mean, it ties in several ways to the things that you're going to be talking about over the next.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this series, because we get so many emails and so many calls about, hey, what about this? And they're making a claim of knowledge about something. And so I wanted to provide some information to people that you can reference and hopefully use this when you're talking to theists or non-theists or whatever. Because it's not just theists who make these kinds of errors. I actually had a contentious email exchange with an atheist a couple of weeks ago who glitched on a statement that was made in a previous episode. I think it was, I want to say it was Don and Russell who were on the show that day, and someone had made a statement that evolution is both a fact and a theory. And this guy initially disputed that, and I pointed him to the Talk Origins page, the very excellent article that Larry Moran did on Talk Origins that explained that it is both a fact and theory.
That's really an example of another sloppy use of language, in that when we say evolution is a fact, we're talking about one thing. When we say evolution is theory, we're talking about another thing.
Yeah.
But they're very slight differences.
But the thing is, though, scientists use the word fact in the same way that every, lay people do it.
Yeah.
It means the same thing. And theory is the one where people glitch. And so it's important to explain, what you mean when you say a scientific theory.
Right.
It's not wild conjecture.
And, you're talking about people who clearly, if we demonstrate anything, we demonstrate that atheists have no dogma, no tenets, and aren't a hive mind. There is considerable disagreement, even within the ACA, on a whole number of issues. Jen and I don't agree on everything, because she's wrong about a couple things.
I used to think that, but then I realized I was mistaken.
I'm working to correct her, because that's me. I'm this strange Svengali that has entrapped a group of people. I'm quietly building a cult, and but I just haven't figured out how to get it to work when you have a bunch of free thinkers and independent people who don't want to worship anybody or anything. But I get emails quite frequently from people who watch the show, who appreciate what we've done, what we talk about, perhaps a comment that I've said or Jen said or somebody else has said, and immediately assume, wow, they've come to the conclusion that religion is nonsense just like I have, and so therefore we're just alike. And so I can talk to them about this. And it comes as a surprise to some people when they present their particular conspiracy theory or woo claim,
or simple misunderstanding of what's going on.
Or even maybe a preference of, I like this TV show and you don't. That, oh, wow, we're not actually the same. I mean, I don't see that as a problem. As a matter of fact, I see that as kind of one of the beautiful things about life is, I mean, if everybody was the same and everybody had the same opinions about everything or the same views about everything, you'd have this like dull gray world that would be kind of boring.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be like the primordial soup. No individuality, no interest. Who's next?
Craig in California.
Craig in California. How are you?
I'm fine. You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Inspired, by that old canard, atheists have no morality. I bring yet another example of not only atheists having morality, but the morality being better than that religion. This week, how's about the Pope being against condoms in Africa, which is both overpopulated and infested by HIV? That's an example of atheist morality being better than religious morality. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No argument there.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah,
You're welcome. Bye.
I think the Pope's the entire Catholic Church has blood on its hands, if only for the atrocity that happens in Africa. With they've actually run billboards that have a skull on it and says, this is a condom user, implying that if you use condoms you're going to die from AIDS. They've put out campaigns that said that I guess the NGOs were putting holes in the condoms, so you're going to get AIDS anyway. They've put out a lot of misinformation, and their whole thing is burn the condoms, just say no. And of course that doesn't work, and it's also it betrays a deep misunderstanding of how the AIDS epidemic in Africa differs from almost every other place on the planet. And I think that whatever solution there is to the AIDS epidemic in Africa, it's not going to come from the Vatican. It's probably not going to come from any Western civilization. It's going to ultimately be an African solution. And
yeah, and this is I'm not saying this just to piss people off, but it will. I can't speak for anybody else's views about morality, but in much the same way that there may be some small area where I, for example, might be more knowledgeable than Stephen Hawking, maybe the Bible, who knows. I don't think that makes me smarter or better in any way than Stephen Hawking. However, when we're talking about morals, for me, not only am I more moral than the character of God in the Bible, or pretty much any other character in the Bible that I can think of, across the board, I'm also more moral than almost every person who accepts any Orthodox Christian doctrine I've ever heard of. And this goes, by the way, for many other religions. I'm speaking particularly about Christianity, because in order to get there, you have to accept this immoral doctrine of, for example, and I know this doesn't apply to all Christians, original sin, substitutional atonement, whereas my moral views are about personal responsibility. They're about demonstrable harm, and also the very idea of sin, that there is some thought crime against some being out there, or that if I'm lusting after somebody, that this is in and of itself necessarily evil. I find patently absurd. And by the way, if it weren't for lust, the human race would have gone extinct a long time ago.
Yeah, didn't the Shakers try that?
Yeah.
It didn't work out too well for them.
Yeah.
Great furniture, though.
Who's next?
Jessica in the Netherlands.
Jessica from the Netherlands.
Hello.
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 Hi. I have to say I don't have any video at the moment. I can only hear you through Skype. So
Okay.
if once you go offline, I won't be able to hear you. So
Okay.
anyway, my question was, first I had a kind of a technical question about the website, about the podcasts. There used to be podcasts from before 2009, and lately it seems they've all been taken offline. Do you know anything about that? I mean, the MP3 format?
Yeah, we have storage limits.
Okay, so that's the reason.
Yeah, so
will they be ever coming on in some other form? I mean, there's the videos now, but
yeah, the videos are always available. And if you want the podcasts from the older podcasts, you can email us, and we can burn a CD for you. And we charge.
Actually, they can go right to the products site.
Yeah,
if
the
you go
product
to
site. That's
Atheist
right.
Community of Austin or the ACA website, atheist-community.org, and click on products, there's DVDs of the shows, but then there's also compilation audio CDs. That's basically all the shows from a year in audio format.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we sell those basically at cost. So it's a very small
and
charge.
you ship overseas?
I believe.
Yeah,
we
but that's
can.
what you'd probably want to email about so that
Yeah,
we can make sure, because we're not trying to make any money off this, but we're also not trying to go broke. Also, by the way, since this has come up over and over again, if somebody has those and they want to set them up on some kind of file share thing, if you want to torrent those, whatever, you're free to do that. This is the only reason that they're not freely available on our site anymore is because we have storage space requirements and bandwidth requirements, and keeping up 11 years worth of show audio just went too far.
Okay. Oh, thanks for answering that.
Sure.
My second question, the real question actually, was about my boyfriend and I were recently talking. We are both atheists. I used to be a believer up until a few years ago, and ever since then I've been kind of forced to reevaluate some of my other beliefs, like regarding the supernatural in general, and like customs that I still have left over from the time that I was a believer. And Michael Jackson died recently, as you might have heard. And it kind of got us thinking about that, how the media treated him before, that everybody was always mocking him, and suddenly he drops dead, and it's almost like nobody's allowed to say anything bad anymore. And it got us thinking about honoring the dead, and how even among atheists it seems to be that if somebody dies that you don't personally know, then you're suddenly not allowed to say anything bad about them, even if you were before. And I'm wondering if this is some sort of leftover from like the cultural implications of religion.
I don't think so. I think there may be an aspect of that, and this is just off the cuff thinking about this. I think the reason is that, for example, I went after Falwell. I did this also after Falwell died. I have no problems talking about what a despicable human being I happen to think he was. But I was slightly nicer about him after he died. And the reason for that wasn't that I don't want to speak ill of the dead, or that I want to kind of revise my opinion of them. It's that now that person is not here, so my comments now affect other people and not just that person. Beforehand, when Falwell was just a big fat buffoon and a terrible human being, when I went after him for things like that, yeah, I'm sure his family probably wouldn't have liked that very much. But the harm essentially is split between Falwell, who deserved it, and his family. And once he's dead, his family becomes the lion's share of my ire. And
Well,
I don't
can't
know
hurt
them
him at all anymore.
And I can't blame them for what he's done. Yeah. I think that is part of it. It's much the same way that why do we bother having funerals? Why don't we just chuck people out? Funerals aren't for the dead person. They're for the people who remain. Whether it's for them to mourn, whether it's a chance to celebrate somebody's life now that it's over. The person in the coffin or the person in the urn, or the person whose body was never recovered, the funeral isn't for them. There's nothing about it for them. It is ceremony. It does have ties to religion. It may have ties to supernatural, irrational thoughts. But I think the biggest tie, and this is just my opinion, is that it's really about us as humans, as interpersonal beings, having empathy for each other, being able to understand what it's like to lose someone, even if we haven't, by imagining what it would be like to lose somebody we care about. I think that's why people are generally nicer in that regard.
Yeah, I can understand that there's really the honoring the living instead of honoring the dead. That's part of it. But it seems to me that even like I can understand in like you're on a public TV show and everything, so people can actually have access to your opinions, and you don't want to offend the family of for example, Falwell, necessarily, and but
his son's an asshat too, so I'm fine offending him now. Because I had this feeling while I was talking about this with my boyfriend, and you used to be able to, everybody kind of made fun of Michael Jackson, and you used to be able to just crack jokes, and it didn't mean anything, whether you liked him or not, and now it's like he wasn't a fan of him or anything, but if I say something now, he's an atheist just like me, but he gets this kind of like, you shouldn't say that, almost like defensive, and I'm like, why? We don't know his family. We're just talking to each other here. Yeah. We're not offending anyone. No one can hear us. So what is this about? Is there still some remnant in our memories and our subconscious maybe that we shouldn't be saying certain things because somebody might be listening?
Yeah,
I'm just wondering, like, even if it's not anything public.
I'm definitely with you on this in that I have no problem. Okay, there is a big problem with taking somebody and out of the kind of normal empathetic respect, elevating their status after they're dead. You don't take Hitler and try to turn him into a saint after he's dead. And if Michael Jackson had actually been convicted of the crimes that he may or may not have done and yet bought his way out of the chance to determine whether that's the case. If he had been convicted, I don't think anybody would be elevating him. They'd say, here's a guy who did a lot for music and was brilliant, and he was a whack job with a weird life. But, we're not going to elevate him. I think because there wasn't any clear tarnishment on him other than this guy's a little weird and maybe did some things that, he should have got in trouble for. I think afterwards you kind of go a little easier, even in private. I don't. I'm limited on the TV, although we're going to have to, this show might not actually make public access because we've talked about products a couple times. But I'm limited into what I want to say and what I can say in certain venues. But for me, for example, there are no sacred cows, Muhammad, whatever, especially when it comes to humor. I've heard some jokes about Michael Jackson and others that made me kind of temporarily recoil. But if they were still funny, I'm still going to laugh. And I don't care what the subject is. I don't care if it's babies in a microwave. If the joke is of a form that it's actually funny, it's not like anybody's actually advocating that. There's an absurdity there. But I don't think there's any sacred cows, and you may be right that kind of reaction has something to do with a subconscious idea about somebody else listening. I don't think there's enough information to really determine which of the many possible explanations for this really apply. But I think you can recover from it either way.
Yeah. Well, and a point I was going to make about, Michael Jackson and other people that die, and then, often what happens, especially with a very public person who's tried very hard to keep at least part of their life private, is that after their death, more information comes out about them. And sometimes that information makes them a much more sympathetic character than they were before. Other times we find out they were, a bigger son of a bitch than we thought they were before. And so I think people respond to that. And maybe that's what, your friend is responding to. Maybe he's learned some things about Michael Jackson since his death that make him a little more sympathetic in his eyes, and he's just not comfortable trashing him anymore. I don't know. But I think that's possible too.
So basically, that's a long way of us saying we don't have an answer for you.
Well, it was interesting to hear your opinions anyway.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the call.
That was pretty much my question. I just wanted to say I love the show and keep up the good work.
Well, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it's. We haven't talked about this before on the show, I don't think, but it's one of those things where when a famous painter dies, their paintings increase in value. As a matter of fact, some people flail away in obscurity and poverty their entire life, and a single one of their paintings after they die is now worth more than 100 times what they made in their entire lifetime for everything they ever sold. And part of that has to do. I think there's an absurdity in how we elevate people's status once they're gone. It's this kind of myth making. We're fond of myths and legends. We might, also some of it changes later on. That what so and so did in their childhood, it can be used. I think this is something that may have been in Ehrman's book when he used as an example. But so and so as a kid was a terror, and we were never sure what happened. And if that kid grows up to be a doctor, all of a sudden it's looked back fondly and jokingly. Oh boy, he was a nightmare, but everything turned out okay. Or maybe there was some subtle hint there about his future, blah blah blah. And if he turns out to be a serial killer, it's the exact same activity is now in the he used to torture animals and hurt stuff, and we always knew he was a bad seed from the get-go. Yeah. And so the hindsight being 2020, it's not. Memory is not 2020. Eyewitness testimony is not 2020. And when we look back at somebody's life after they've died, our tendency to amplify the good and downplay the bad gives us a very distorted image. I have both of my grandfathers are dead. I don't think I have a single bad memory of either one of them at all. And I know that there were, it's absurd to think that there wasn't some kind of, I witnessed an argument one time, or somebody was mean or grumpy or hateful or whatever. By and large, both my grandfathers were great men, and they loved all of us kids, and so there may not have been much of it, but I have none of those memories and wouldn't want them. I prefer to look back at my grandfather. I don't even want to know what my parents or anybody else's view of my grandfather was from their childhood. I have mine. Those are my memories, and I'm going to joyously elevate both of my grandfathers to this mythic status in my mind, because that's what I want to do, and it's not anything that hurts anybody, and it's not relevant to truth. Now, if somebody comes along and wants to write a biography, I'm probably not a good person to interview. And this is what takes us back to what Jen's talking about with how do you know what you know? How can you be certain? And was somebody necessarily lying? When you talk about things written, for example, in the Bible by people who were eyewitnesses, well, that's simply not true. We have nothing in here that's necessarily an eyewitness testimony, certainly nothing that's confirmably eyewitness. But even if we did, you're not necessarily getting good information from these eyewitnesses.
Yeah. Well, and that's regarding the life of Jesus in particular, but people ask, would you think there's anything in the Bible that's truthful and actual history? And the answer is yes. And in fact, we know that there are some things, and it's something I'm going to talk about in the next segment next month, that there are actual historical events recorded accurately in the Bible.
And some of them are recorded inaccurately.
Yes. And I'm going to talk about how we determine if something is accurately recorded in the Bible, and I'm going to give you an example.
So definitely stay tuned in 5 weeks when we finally get Jen back.
That's
and
right.
She actually missed a week, so it's been like 10 for her.
I haven't been on the show since the
That's what I mean.
first week of May. I've missed
You missed 2?
2, yeah, because you had to go to TAM.
All right. One of these days,
then,
one of these
you know.
weekends, I'm just not going to show up, and Jen's going to do the show with whoever the co-host is, because we need to get her on. John, you can go ahead and get the next one. We got like 20 minutes left in the show. As a reminder, we're going to dinner afterwards at Pluckers, and also as a reminder, we'll be back on again next week, same time. Spread the word. You can download. You can watch it online. You can email tv@atheist-community.org to get to us any information in that regard. Also, we've added a compressor, so the audio should be much better. I mentioned that a couple of times now over the past 2 shows, or this show and the nonprofits, because I wanted to get feedback. Since we're doing this guerrilla style, I mean, we're here at my place with whatever audio equipment we can get. We bought, we've got a good mixer now. We've got a compressor. I just want to kind of make sure that we're still getting good audio out. And, if I start yelling, we're not going to blow out anybody's eardrums or piss anybody off. Who's next? George in New York.
George.
Like George? George?
Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Me?
Yes.
Hi, can you folks hear me?
Yes. Can
Yes.
you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. We're having a little net trouble here in New York. It must be that hurricane that never materialized.
I prayed for you.
Well, thank you. And yet, it worked regardless. Actually prayed that it wouldn't work, so I guess our non-prayers non-canceled each other out.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. Is the reason God can't heal amputees is because somebody's sitting around praying that God won't heal amputees over and over and over again. So it's canceling out.
You see, you say that with a sort of wry detachment, but I guarantee you somewhere some apologist is jotting that down for a future debate point.
Yeah.
Probably, but I'll take credit for it when I hear it. I coined
by
it.
the way,
I coined it right
just
here.
to get something out of the way, in case anyone was wondering, I am not Professor MTH. A bunch of people seem to think that I am after a recent call. I guess we sound alike. He's another outspoken atheist fellow with a YouTube thing. I'm not him and he's not me, at least not the last time I checked.
Okay.
Also, regarding the AIG list of arguments you shouldn't use, there's actually 2 of them. There's the one that they intend, and there's the second list, which is the entire table of contents of AIG.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, enough fun. I love the episode, the whole Die for a Lie thing. I'm glad you guys are tackling this, because just last night I had a Christian friend hit me with this, and I was as polite as I can be. I rolled my eyes because, like you folks, I've heard this so many times that it's just exasperating. It's such a bad argument. You wonder almost if you're being insulted when you hear things like this, because it's so easily slapped down. I looked at him and I said, 2 words for you: Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Here are modern people in a technological industrial society where we've had a century and a half of scientific psychology. We understand what hope and desire do, and that desire will kick knowledge's ass every time.
I can trump you with one word: Jonestown.
Yeah,
Even better.
Yeah.
Or we can talk about the guy who went in and shot up a gym the other day and then shot himself.
Right.
And in his, we talked about on yesterday's Nonprofits, in his journal, he talked about how his pastor had basically convinced him that somebody could commit mass murder and still go to heaven. And so he believed that was true, and it didn't, because of that belief, he wasn't deterred from taking the psychotic action that he took.
There's also the case, the well-known psychological dynamic of someone who has, by their own actions or by fate or by whatever, been forced into a corner, will believe something even more powerfully if he thinks that everything is on the line. Let's say you join a religion and you are persecuted. If you are at that moment of truth, it will be, in some cases, it will be more painful for you to say, I'm about to die and this was all for nothing, than it will be to say, I'm about to die and you know what? I'm nailing my flag to the mast.
Yeah.
I'm dying for my beliefs. That's a common dynamic. You know, army psychiatrists see this all the time in our soldiers, enemy soldiers who are taking capture, who are taken prisoner. We'll talk about this. I mean, they interview guys who fought for the most appalling causes, and they believed it at the time. They were ready to die.
Yeah,
Although later on, when they look back, they said, "What was I thinking?"
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because taking this to show that this is part of the human condition and not necessarily something exclusive to religion. This is religion making use of psychology.
Well, it's in the same way that you can make a strong secular argument for the function and origin of morality in social animals like human beings. Religion has moral systems too. They take credit for it. They're just taking credit for a human activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing, one of the things that really gets me about this is that, and I have to throw a Bible history thing in there, it wouldn't be a George from New York call. Christians themselves, including apologists, including the most prominent apologists, if they know the first thing about the New Testament, understand that what we have of it, the Gospels, the Acts, the Epistles, were all collected, protected, spread, copied, disseminated, preached from by believing Christians in small communities and groups that spread the belief system and spread the ideas out from its origin point. It's not like there was some library in Rome where they were keeping this stuff and we can treat them like equivalent historical documents.
There was one in Alexandria, but they fucking burned it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's that. I'd like that back. You can have some funny Gospels. I'd just like to read Alexander's life.
Yeah.
Because apparently we lost the only copy of that.
Although I think go ahead.
And the comedics. Apparently that was there and that's gone.
I think the church history point of the day that I find most relevant, though, is specific to Eusebius, who seems to indicate that it is okay to lie as long as it furthers the cause of God and Christianity. Well, yeah. And this is somebody who was instrumental in or critical to all of our knowledge about the early era of Christianity. So you've got somebody who's basically saying, yeah, if it furthers our cause, lying is the right thing to do. And he's the source of much of the information we have about first and early second century Christianity.
And the funny thing about that is, of course, and I hate to mention Marcion again, but here we go. The funny thing about that is, the more history becomes available, and the closer you look at it, the more you realize that the early schismatic and disparate takes on Christianity were as intellectually defensible as the thing which became orthodoxy.
Yes.
And they were suppressed by force and by various other means. The idea that there was this one, this is such the obvious thing, and of course this one, because it was the only one that was coherent and defensible, that's simply a fantasy.
Yeah, and if Marcion had perhaps been a little more gregarious, charismatic in forming his collection of people who agreed with him, if he'd been a little more of that vein, we might not have any Jews at all.
Yeah. Well, listen, if they'd listened to Martin Luther, you might not have any. Thanks for mentioning again. Yes. People have no idea what a madman Martin Luther actually was.
Yeah, I'll talk trash about Falwell and Robertson and Comfort and whatever crazy apologists today. I don't think, while some of them I think are intellectual buffoons, and some of them are just disturbed, and some of them are irrational, and some of them are borderline evil, I don't know that any of them come close to the sort of intellectually dishonest, evil fuck that Martin Luther was.
Oh, Martin Luther's going to be in my third segment
dun, dun, dun.
on this. So
yeah, 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, one of the advantages of being able to read and understand German, which I do, is number one, you can watch World War II movies without looking at the subtitles, and number two is you can see what a complete disaster the translation on Das Boot was, and number three is whenever you talk about Luther or any of his contemporaries, and people say, well, he's been mistranslated, you can say, excuse me, no, he has not. I can read the original German. Yeah, that is really what he said, that thinking is bad. Yeah. That's what he said.
And number four, when you're watching Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid and they talk about Heinemachefrau, you laugh probably harder than some other people.
I must make a shameful confession. I've never seen that.
Oh, God. Hang up on him. Hang up on his ass.
I knew I'd find your button sooner or later, Dillahunty. And by the way, how dare you say you're not a Svengali-like cult leader? I just bought the robes.
Well, I have to say that to the masses. I mean, if I admitted that I was Satan incarnate, What kind of? Oh, maybe that's a better plan. Hi, I'm Satan incarnate. I freely admit this, and you're welcome to think that I'm absurd as I draw all of your chillins to me.
Hey, is that why so many prominent male American atheists are crop their hair short? Are we all doing the Anton LaVey thing? Because I have my hair cut short too.
It's I would think though that if I was Satan, I'd have longer hair to hide the horns, which I've had surgically removed.
I'd have a more prominent chin. I think Satan would definitely. I'd want that. I'd
have
definitely
fewer
want that,
chins.
That kind of Kirk Douglas chin. I think that would go well for recruiting. But back to the Bible. Even if we concede, if we stipulate that the decades and generations where the Christians had this material all to themselves, and we stipulate that they were scrupulously honest with it, and that what came into the New Testament was an accurate transmission of the earliest available documents that they had. They didn't change anything. They didn't clean it up, so we can't be smart asses and say, oh, how about that?
Which we know isn't true.
Yeah, it turns out that all the apostles died heroically for what they believed. Wow, what are the chances? Even if we're not going to argue and take that route, as you say, it doesn't prove anything. Because it just means that they went to their deaths believing, as I might have, under different circumstances in my life, that what I believed was right and worth dying for because there was some manner of reward waiting for me. I mean, you can't leave that out. That the idea system that they were dying for explicitly preaches supernatural redemption and reward.
Yeah.
It's not like someone dying for free market capitalism where you might be an atheist and say, well, I'm going to die for freedom, but yeah, I'm dead. That's it.
Yeah. I think it's worthwhile to die to protect free speech?
Yeah.
I think that may actually be something that's worthy, but there's nothing intrinsic in free speech that should lead one to conclude that.
You hope that your death maybe moves the struggle along a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that will stand.
I hope I don't die.
Your there'll be an echo of what you did that lives on in this.
I'd rather live for the cause of free speech.
Yeah, Christianity says, guess what? There's a payoff.
Yeah, and it's not even virgins. It's I don't know, some kind of wings harp stuff.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing, and then I'll clear the line. By the way, the irrationalism didn't end with Luther. If anyone's interested, look up the early 17th century movement, also in Germany, known as Pietism, where they reacted against the increasing intellectualism and scholasticism as Protestantism got more complicated and more established. They reacted against that and said, no, this is a mystical thing. This is a spiritual thing. Stop thinking, stop arguing. Get your nose out of the book. It's something you have to live. It's irrational. It's in the heart. It's faith.
You need to stop all that thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
been the message since the Garden of Eden.
This is how far back this goes.
You have no idea. I'm sorry, George. I got sidetracked on something privately humorous.
Oh, well.
I'll tell you about it later.
Oh, and by the way, the Pietists were the first people to coin the phrase, the idea of a personal relationship with God. They used that verbiage. So in case you think that just came along and with Wesley, no, before him.
I thought it came along with Jimmy Carter.
Well,
the whole born again. I'm kidding.
You mean after the rabbit attack? No.
No, being it was around the time of Jimmy Carter that the whole born again as a phrase.
Yes.
Gained so much popularity in the United States, and so I was mostly joking on that. But
no, this is an old thing, and it seems to come to the surface every so often, where they say it's not about thoughts, it's not about facts, it's about feeling and faith and devotion. And as we've said before, that's okay as long as you say that up front.
Yeah, and as long as you recognize that your beliefs inform your actions, and your actions have consequences. And no matter how strongly you believe it, and how personally you believe it, if your actions have consequences that harm yourself or others, people may take action against that.
That's right. Oh, and if can I just say to Dennis through you that
no, because you said just one more thing, and now it's two. Go ahead.
Wait, can I apologetically go back and redact that?
Yeah, hurry.
I agree with you and not with him regarding nonprofits and religion equals psychopathology.
Wow, okay. Email me later because I missed that.
Okay. Anyway, great show again, guys. Thanks a lot.
Later, George. Thanks.
Ciao.
So we have 3.5 minutes left in the show. So whoever you get needs to get in, say what they want to say, and be ready to get gone.
All right.
It's Aaron in Houston.
Go.
Yeah, hey Matt.
Aaron, how you doing?
Good.
You have almost no time, so it's yours.
Okay, I just wanted, first off, I wanted to talk about a lot of stuff. However, due to limited time, I'm just gonna want to do some responses to what y'all guys said about the historical Jesus earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
When addressing the ex-biblical evidence for Jesus, I'm not going to go into Josephus because that just takes way too long, but let's just do Tacitus really quick. Okay, you say that Tacitus, he only referenced Christians, and this it's false. If you go to the Annals 1544, which is a section, it says Christus, the founder of the name, suffered at the extreme penalty at Pontius Pilate. It does not say...
Yes. I agree with you. Did you think I hadn't read the Annals? Have you read that in the context? He is writing a letter asking what I do about these Christians, and when he talks about and mentions Christos, he's not relaying any evidence or testimony to that. He's talking about what these people believe to have happened.
No, I think you might be getting confused with Pliny the Younger or something, because that was when he discovered Christians. They didn't know what to do with them.
Well,
they said, they sung at the they sung songs for Christus at a set time. But
Pliny the Younger did do that. You're absolutely correct. But I mean, if you read all of what Tacitus is saying, and by the way, this isn't contemporary evidence in the first place.
Okay, I was just going to get to that, but...
Okay. Hurry. You got like a minute.
Okay. So, you say he wasn't contemporary. Well, what I would say is contemporary evidence is not a requirement for history. You don't have to have a contemporary source. If you'd like to claim that, then could you please cite me a historian that specifically says that you need contemporary evidence?
Why would I need to cite a historian?
Well, because they know what they're talking about. They're the people who know, the criteria for history.
No. What I'm talking about is whether or not it is demonstrable that somebody actually existed. And when we're talking about, if you think that there isn't a difference between contemporary evidence and non-contemporary evidence, you're just mistaken. I'm not asserting in any way that Jesus didn't exist. I happen to be fine with the idea that Jesus existed. I'm simply saying that there is no contemporary extra-biblical evidence to support any event from Jesus' life confirming his existence. That's all I've ever said about this.
Okay, just earlier in the show you sounded like, you didn't really believe that Jesus existed, and I was just saying that for something as common as a crucifixion or something like that, you don't really need contemporary evidence. It's just what I'm saying.
And I'm pretty much fine with that. However, no textual report's going to be enough to confirm a miracle. We've got to let you go. We have 10 seconds left. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you again next week. And join us at Pluckers if you're around. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.